It is finally time. College football is right around the corner, which means time to preview Michigan State, Michigan, Detroit Lions, and no better time to do that than to celebrate 600 episodes. And I am honored to welcome on my really good friend. Every time we reach a milestone like this, he joins. Cole. How are we doing, man? 600 episodes, college football is right around the corner. I am so excited.
Also excited. Ready to put some baseball behind me. Ready to see a little contact.
Yeah.
Pad popping, all the likes. No, excited to be here. Congratulations on 600. I'm very
Thank
flattered
you.
that you bring me on for a lot of the monumental episodes that you have. So just hoping that I can contribute to the episode, bring you some good takes, some interesting information, and have a good time with you.
Yeah, we always have a good time. Contact, football, Lions, finally have pads on. College football camp starts this week for some teams. We're right there. And I know there's some excitement, obviously, around the state of Michigan. We have two teams with two brand new head coaches in Michigan State with Pat Fitzgerald and Michigan with Kyle Whittingham. I can't remember really the last time that has happened. It's been a little while without obviously other situations going on, unfortunately. But let's talk about Michigan State and Pat Fitzgerald making a return to the Big Ten. I think there's some really interesting games this upcoming season. There's one in particular that I think is the most interesting outside of obviously the rivalry matchup against Michigan. But what are your thoughts on Pat Fitzgerald as the head coach? We'll kind of talk a little bit about him and then kind of get into this team a little bit because the over-under FanDuel, not very friendly to this team this year.
Yeah, you're not wrong. No, I by and large like the hire. I think that they a little bit went with the similarly to how a lot of NFL teams go from real cerebral to real tough guy coach, and or like kind of disciplinarian to more player friendly coach.
Yeah.
I think that Sparty needed a hire like this. Obviously going from Jonathan Smith, who's kind of very quiet, not a very emotional sort of guy. That was, I think, one of the primary critiques outside of the lack of winning, was that you didn't feel like there was a big emotional investment on the side of the previous regime, particularly the head coach. So I think that Pat Fitzgerald is going to be the antithesis of that. Obviously, he is kind of his own brand. He's a very well-known guy, very well-respected guy. I think that if nothing else, I think that you can expect this team to be much tougher,
Yeah.
much more physical, much more emotional than the previous two seasons, which I'm looking forward to. I think that Pat Fitzgerald's kind of identity and the way that he wants to play football is much more conducive to traditional Michigan State ball. Big defensive guy, obviously played linebacker at Northwestern. Made the very famous Rose Bowl appearance with Northwestern back in the 90s. It's going to be a little interesting him making the move from really just being the longtime coach at his alma mater to making his first big move within conference to Michigan State. But I expect a tough team, particularly on the defense side of the ball, really leaning into the smash mouth element as well on offense, which defense and running the ball is kind of, the Michigan State football thing, right? It's old school Big Ten.
Exactly.
And I think that I think it'll be a welcome change.
Yeah, play with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Or wait, I'm sorry. According to Pat Fitzgerald, we're playing with chips on our shoulder. I should be more accurate with there, but no, you're absolutely right. It's a little bit of a different kind of perspective, a little bit of a different. I just think overall like approach to things. I think this is a little bit more of like what MSU fans want is kind of have that blue collar mentality of like, hey, like we want to kind of be the underdog, but we want to play physical. And it's interesting because if you look at Michigan, and we'll talk about them a little bit, they kind of went a little bit more of like the West Coast hire, kind of a little bit more of like a Jonathan Smith type hire from Sharon Moore. Obviously, that situation is a completely different situation than MSU was in, but like with Pat Fitzgerald, we're finally going to get some emotion on the sideline, and having him. Obviously, having Bola back, having Rossi back. Like you said, I really think, at least at the end of the day, we're going to get some sort of like effort, like some sort of physicality. Like if it means giving up 20, 30, 40 points sometimes to some of these high powered offenses, that might happen, but at least you're knowing that they're not going to go out without swinging. And that would have been completely different than what MSU have done the last couple of years. And I think that's again where the frustration came from. Is it truly seemed like at times it was like, oh, like we lost. Congratulations to the other team. Good game. They just outplayed us. And at
Yeah.
times I almost want my head coach to just like slam his fist on the table and just saying this is unacceptable. And I think that first fist bump we're going to get of Pat Fitzgerald this year, I think will light the fan base up, and hopefully it'll be in a big set at some point.
Yep. Yep. It'd be a nice change of pace. It really would. It really would. Yeah. And so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's, they're bringing back Joe Rossi as the DC. But other than that, it's pretty much a brand new staff. And there's a whole bunch of new faces. Obviously, it's kind of a fresh start for the whole program, more or less, especially in the era of transfer portal, NIL, the whole thing. And so really, in preparation for this, it's tough to have any idea of how anything's going to go because it's almost like you flip the whole table over and you kind of just are finding pieces on the floor and setting them back up and seeing what you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
And
30 new
so,
transfers, right? Like so many new
yeah,
transfers, and it's like, who do we have?
yes, exactly. So, I don't know if you want to go game by game yet and see how we're going to do on the schedule side of things here. But, I think outside of that, we talked about a little bit on defense. It's I think the most consistent thing that most Spartan fans have coming back is that obviously you have kind of the heart of your defense last year. You have Jordan Hall, the linebacker,
Yeah,
and then you have Alessio, a quarterback, coming back as well. And I heard somebody talking about the Alessio side of things specifically that he did play pretty well down the stretch.
yeah,
Stood in, was a very tough kid, took a lot of hits, things like that. And I think in a way, I think some of the Spartan fan base is a little bit like, if nothing else, we have quarterback figured out, right? Like we got it handled. And I
exactly.
think that, it's easy and understandable to feel that way, but we really don't have a lot of reps for him. He was a freshman last year. Obviously, you're expecting to see some growth this year, but I think there's still a lot of question marks around him.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see. We presumably the receiver room's a little bit light. There's a ton of question marks at receiver as to what we're going to do. Nick Marsh obviously is in Bloomington now, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? Give me your 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're pretty accurate with that. I do think Alessio will obviously be better. I think the offensive line is actually in a spot where I'm feeling like decently confident, which is a little scary. Like at least the starters, right? The backups to the offensive line, it's like there's very little experience there.
Yeah.
So like you hope that this offensive line stays healthy, and we all know that never happens, especially at Michigan State. So obviously toughness is going to be a really big part of the quarterback position. We obviously know Alessio has that, but you mentioned obviously the wide receiver room. And there are a lot of like questions here. Obviously, Christian McCray is back. He is really the only guy back from last year's team that had any sort of impact. You talk about tight ends. Brendan Parachek is back, but he's been injured in the past. This is really a whole new kind of weapons for Alessio, and we don't know exactly what it's going to be. Is this wide receiver room going to be better than it was last year? Probably not. You have KK Smith coming over from Notre Dame. He's a speedster. He hasn't had a ton of like receptions, a ton of yards. Frederick Moore. We got a little bit of a trade between Michigan and Michigan State. Frederick Moore comes over from Michigan, didn't play very much at Michigan, which their wide receiver room the last couple of years hasn't been great. I think it's better this year. I think it's deeper this year. We'll kind of get into that a little bit. And then obviously you have the UConn running back transfer and Cam Edwards. And I think that out of almost all the transfers outside of like a Ben Moraski, Nick Sharp, a Trent Fraley at the offensive line, I think that in itself really shows you and really got the fans the most excited is because he was a really good running back at UConn. But obviously we'll see how that translates to the Big Ten, especially to an offensive line that hasn't been good in like 10 years, it almost seems like. And you have basically three brand new starters on this lineup with Luka Vintic back, but he got hurt and was out all of last year for the most part. And then obviously Connor Moore as well. So I think offense and really the weapons around Alessio is the biggest question mark. And I think that is kind of my concern here is like, what does he have around him? Like, we have
Mhm.
no idea. And it's really going to be up to Nick Sheridan. It's going to be up to the offensive line to protect him and give him some sort of running game. If they can do that, I do think you'll see a little bit of an improvement. But if it's him just stepping back and throwing in that packet over and over and over again, I don't think it's going to be as good as it was last year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that, clearly one of the big things that they did in the offseason with it is they really tried to lean into the size factor of the offensive line, really try to get some big bodies, and they did. And I think that if you're going to see success on the offensive side of the ball, I think a lot of what you're going to see is going to be probably pretty predictable, where you're going to need to run the ball to find success, and it's probably going to be a little bit of run, pass, where you're hoping that you can get some consistent production, first and second down, stay on schedule, and try to get the occasional, play action, maybe something over the top. So I don't really expect it to be all that thrilling of a year yet, despite the fact that obviously, we're bringing in a new OC. I read out of the Kalen DeBoer tree. Has been in Alabama for the last couple of years. I believe he came with Kalen DeBoer actually from Washington as well. But where you're at least hypothetically looking to spread the field quite a bit. I just don't know if we really have the pieces yet to implement that to the full extent that you would hope to. So I think that we might be limited in personnel and be kind of a smash mouth team out of a more modern spread offense, which the beauty of that is obviously there's a lot of flexibility to that system and you can run the ball quite a
Yeah.
bit if you so choose. But it works best when you can have some more balance. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do think this wide receiver room is going to be faster. I think that we have faster guys at the wide receiver position, so I do wonder like how that will factor into it. I can see obviously KK Smith going over the top, or Christian McCray is going to have a massive year, and obviously out of any like position group offensively that I trust the most when it comes to like development and getting guys to really step up in that position, it honestly would be the wide receiver room. You have Courtney Hawkins in there who has stuck around through multiple different head coaches, and I think that in itself speaks volumes of like what kind of coach he is. And I think you have also some young guys. Bryson Williams can be a guy that can maybe make a little bit of an impact. Charles Taplin as well could make a little bit of an impact. It's going to be a very inexperienced room, but if there's anyone that comes to development that I would trust the most offensively, like I said, it would be that wide receiver room, even though that to me is the biggest kind of question mark outside of tight end. Tight end, you obviously had Brendan Parachek, Kyrios. There's one guy on the tight end room that I'm really excited to watch and probably won't necessarily surprise you. But Carson Gulker out of Ferris State, I really like. What MSU can do with him. I think there's so many different packages they can put him in. Obviously, being a former quarterback at Ferris State, running the ball, catching the ball, being a tight end, he has so many different abilities that I think that you can really use him to your advantage. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that's going to start every single snap, but I think he's a guy that you can have multiple different packages, especially in the red zone. I would love to see him in the red zone, maybe a short fourth down, like put him at quarterback. Like this is a big guy that understands what it's like to be in these situations. But obviously, Big Ten plays a little bit different than D2. But I still think his size, his talent, his athleticism will still translate pretty well. And while at the end of the day, he might not necessarily stand out the most when it comes to the stat Page, I think he's a guy that's going to absolutely make an impact and maybe be a little bit of like a Cam Hayward that MSU had a few years ago.
Well, and you saying that kind of drawing the tight ends special package quarterback sort of situation. We have seen that in college football be implemented pretty well. The immediate guy that came to mind is Blake Bell years ago for Oklahoma. Bring him in as just a really big body quarterback. I believe that he also kind of moonlighted as a tight end for them at times as well, but just big body. If you needed to kind of a tush push before the tush push sort of thing, just a big guy if you needed a yard or two. So yeah, there's a lot of fun spots where you could use a guy like him, and kind of some of those gimmicky plays. And when you are a little bit shorthanded sometimes on the personnel department. Obviously, it helps when you have a couple fun packages, fun play calls, a little bit of trickery, misdirection, things like that, to
Yeah.
help cut down on those edges.
Absolutely, and I was wrong. Not Cam Hayward, it's Connor Hayward. Can't believe
Mm.
I mixed that up, especially for
The other
how
Hayward.
much, yeah, the other Hayward, how much we talk about Michigan State. But I really did like Connor Hayward at MSU. He was a guy that his senior year, towards the end, was really a big, massive part of that offense, and obviously getting opportunities in the NFL, because of it. But let's go to the other side of the ball. Obviously, we mentioned Jordan Hall. I really do like the Trey Bell pickup from Iowa State. I think that's a really good pickup when it comes to the secondary. Nakai Martinez is back. Avion Gross is back. Charles Brantley is back. That's a name that we all should be very familiar with. Outside of that, though, like again, especially the defensive line, what kind of production are we going to see? Obviously, I know Kenny Soares has been a big name kind of in the offseason. A lot of people were excited about him. Eli Conan came over from Illinois. But like they truly invested in the offensive line. The defensive line, little bit of a different situation story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and obviously, last year, pass rush in particular was such a weakness for the defense. I mean, was it 6 games in a row without a sack? Is that what it was?
Something like that.
Um,
At least
yeah.
in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's one of the most important, if not the most important position in football outside of quarterback is an edge rusher. And there's not a lot of depth to the defensive line this year. Not a lot of experience there necessarily as well, which doesn't bode well. At the same time, one of the few upsides of last year's team is that we actually were pretty decent against the run, which in a lot of ways, running defense is more or less just gap integrity and kind of desire, more or less. Which those things don't require a ton of talent to do. But if you have buy-in, obviously, Joe Rossi has been there. You're not losing him, even though he's obviously bringing a lot of different pieces. But if you can have some belief in Rossi, belief in Max Bulla, belief in Pat Fitzgerald, and kind of what they're trying to do, I think similarly to how like rebounding is kind of just a how bad do you want it thing in basketball. I think a
Yeah.
lot of run stopping in defense is just like a desire question as well. So I think if the culture is there defensively, even if the talent might not be there this year, I think that could be kind of a sneaky upside of this defense is being able to stop the run.
Exactly, especially when you have a defensive coordinator that's back that has kind of a little bit of a game plan, what he truly wants. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, right? You have Max Bulla back as the co-defensive coordinator, which I think everyone has been kind of clamoring for Max Bulla to be back just because he's always been considered one of like the more like up and coming young coaches. And obviously he played at Michigan State. Like I think you're going to get really great linebacker play. Obviously that should hopefully help the defensive line a little bit, especially stopping the run. Obviously Jordan Hall being a senior, being the guy at center, you're going to have some pieces here. And this is going to be a defense that I think you're going to continue to see play hard. I think that was probably the biggest thing that you kind of saw last year, especially when the offense wasn't doing anything. The defense did finally like crack like eventually because they were just on the field for so long. But I think effort wise defensively, while you can maybe question like what happened at the defensive line, you can maybe question what this defense is going to be. I think the whole idea of effort won't be questioned, and it's just going to be a defense that at the end of the day might not be great, but like will maybe keep you in, and at least there's no questions on that physical style of football that these coaches are going to want to play.
Yeah. Yep, I couldn't agree more. Well, do you want to get into our roster rundown, or excuse me, our schedule rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. 4.5 right now is the over under for Michigan
Never where you
State.
want to be.
Never where you want to be. Better than it was last year,
Yeah.
but never where you want to be. We will see if MSU is hitting the over, hitting the under. I think we'd be very confident of the over if it was 3.5. I would be interested to see where we both have it at 4.5. But let's start out with the opening game. We are 30 days away. September 4th. It is August 4th currently. It is going to be a night game against Toledo. Honestly, if like Kendall was still there for Toledo, I would be like slightly nervous, like a little bit, but like MSU's winning this game. Like, I think MSU started 1-0 at this point. I think MSU's like 11.5 point favorites in this one last time I checked. So I think MSU starts 1-0 under Pat Fitzgerald.
I hope so too. And honestly, I mean, we can obviously go to the Eastern game as well. Same deal. If you can't handle your Maction, then it doesn't bode well for the rest of the season. So,
Yeah.
I think if you're trying to hit the over on the win total, if you're Sparty, you got to take care of week 1 and 2. So aside from that, I know you are partial to your emus here on
We
Michigan
like the
sports, but
Emus here.
yeah, we like the emus, but yeah, I'm hoping that Sparty takes care of business in week 2 as well.
Agreed.
So yeah, if we can't slam dunk two max, then we got problems.
Yeah, and we are almost halfway there between our over under at four
Yeah,
and a half already through week 2. So technically, we should be hitting the over at this point, but this is when things get a little bit more difficult. We get a little bit of a homecoming game for obviously Max Bull being a coach last year, last couple of years as the linebackers coach there. We got Notre Dame. The rivalry is back. We got one of the best trophies in all of college football.
the megaphone.
The megaphone is back. Is
Yeah.
there any chance here that MSU pulls it off?
Yeah, I guess never say never, but if I were a betting man, I would not be taking the green and white in this one. Obviously, they have Carr, the quarterback, who is one of the Heisman front runners for the year. Marcus Freeman's built a really, really good program there at Notre Dame that have come to expect that they're going to compete on the national level.
Yeah,
They are going to be one of the betting favorites kind of in that college football playoff win it all sort of bubble that exists so far. So I don't see it happening that way, especially on the road in a night game at Notre Dame. Probably not. At the same time, stranger things have happened.
yeah.
Usually that Michigan State Notre Dame game is tighter than I think a lot of people usually expect it to be. But I'm gonna have to go ahead and put Sparty at 2-1.
I'm going to agree. And obviously, and of course, they had to put this at prime time on
Well,
NBC for a game that MSU will probably lose by 20 to Notre Dame. But hey, you know what? Notre Dame sometimes loses games they're not supposed to. And
sure.
if this is an opportunity for Pat Fitzgerald to plant a flag, if he wins this game, just imagine the fan base behind MSU. Like you're in probably conversations of like probably not being ranked, but I would assume probably receiving votes at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, if Pat Fitzgerald is really looking to win over the fan base, I mean, you're going to need 1 or 2 wins this year that you're not supposed to have. And Notre Dame would be a big, it'd be tough. It'd be a really difficult test for them. But I mean, if you can go into South Bend and get a W in week 3 like that, that would be enormous.
Absolutely. Let's go on to week 4. We got the Nebraska Cornhuskers coming in. Obviously, MSU lost to Nebraska last year, led by new head coach now at Michigan State. Obviously, Jonathan Smith is not here. It's a home game. Does MSU get their first Big Ten win here? Do they have to wait until next week at Wisconsin to try again?
There's a lot of questions, obviously, for Nebraska. I have a change at quarterback. Dylan Ryle is now at Oregon. So, especially in the new age of college football, I mean, who exactly knows what Nebraska is going to look like? It is a home game, which Sparty has working in their favor. I'm going to go ahead and say probably not this week. I think they're going to move to 2-2. There is still a fair bit of experience and still, some continuity there with Matt Rule and what he's built there in Nebraska. It is, I think, a winnable game for Michigan State, but I'm assuming that they're going to be a significant enough underdog in this game, and I'm going to go ahead and go Big Red. So I got them at 2-2.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I think MSU loses at home in this one. I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be close, but I think this will be the first loss for MSU at home. But I actually have MSU flipping the script a little bit. I think week 5 at Wisconsin, I think this is going to be the game that is going to get Luke Fickell fired. I think MSU goes into Wisconsin and beats Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. I don't understand Wisconsin bringing back Luke Fickell. I really don't. I understand like he wants to kind of build it his way, but I think if you're a Wisconsin fan, you want to kind of quote unquote build it the way Pat Fitzgerald is going to do, and that's going to be running football. That's going to be a physical type of game. And if MSU goes into Wisconsin, this might be the quote unquote that flag planting moment that Pat Fitzgerald needs. Even though I don't know how good this Wisconsin team is, it's still a win on the road in Big Ten.
Yeah, yeah. I can get behind that. And, frankly, I was going to say no, but you kind of talked me into it. I do think that, obviously he had success at Cincinnati, right? He was at
Yeah,
Cincinnati. And before that, he had the brief tenure when he was the interim coach for Ohio State and the aftermath of all the Jim Tressel drama. But really in the Big Ten, Luke Fickell as a head coach really hasn't had a lot of success. I don't see a compelling argument as to why that would change. I could definitely see this being a game that gets Luke Fickell canned. Wisconsin kind of has a bit more of a cupcake schedule this year anyway.
yeah,
And so I think that if they don't put up a relatively impressive win total, he's probably gone. And
probably.
you are right. I mean, getting a win at Camp Randall, defeating jump around and all that, I think would be huge for Pat Fitzgerald. So yeah, I actually don't hate it, and I'm going to follow suit with you as well. And I'm going to say Sparty's 3-2.
Hey, we only need 2 more wins. And where are we going to find those wins? I think you find one of them in these next 2 matchups. We got Illinois at home. Obviously, Brett Bielema comes into East Lansing. I think MSU has a little bit of a letdown here, unfortunately. I think MSU gets a big win on the road, comes home, has a little bit of a letdown moment, kind of looking forward to that game against Northwestern, which, like I was kind of hinting at earlier, that's the game I'm watching out of everyone the most besides Michigan.
Yeah, I probably agree that I don't see a win here. Brett Bielema really has built a nice program in Illinois. Unsurprisingly, similar to the feeling of the Brett Bielema Wisconsin teams in a lot of ways, where they were always good, they weren't ever quite great.
Yeah,
They had their moments. Obviously, it was like the Russell Wilson year and stuff like that, and they made a couple Rose Bowls, but you never felt like Wisconsin was like going to win it all. So I think that Illinois probably, as long as Brett Bielema is going to be there, is going to be a 8 or 9 win team. And MSU is definitely not as of this moment, I don't think. So let's put them at 3-3.
agreed. And now we got the fun game. We got a little bit of a redemption game, not only for Pat Fitzgerald, obviously going up against his old team, but we have Aiden Childs coming back to East Lansing as well. This is one of those games that, like, typically on the schedule, I would be like, it's Northwestern, right? Like, it's just a game. But honestly, this might be one of those games where I'm like, there's some storylines to this one. And I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
going to mean a little bit more. And I think Pat Fitzgerald is going to get revenge on his old team. And I think he's going to be smiling ear to ear when he does it. I think he's going to be really happy. And I think MSU wins this game because I think it's meant to happen. It's
I
just
feel you.
God, right? Like I don't think it's supposed to happen, but it's meant to happen. Like it's meant for Pat Fitzgerald to get one last revenge on Northwestern.
Give
Join
me
me.
Aiden Childs to break all their hearts.
No.
No, I listen. I'm going to be a contrarian here. I think that obviously Pat Fitzgerald is going to be motivated and going to want to beat Northwestern. I think that there is infinitely more opportunity here for Aiden Childs to go light up Michigan State, especially when we're probably assuming that we're not going to have a lot of a pass rush and the defense is probably not going to be the best part of our game. I think that Aiden Childs might have a whole bunch of time to throw the football, and I think that Aiden Childs might slice and dice, a la Nico from UCLA last year in the homecoming game when he just took us to town. So I'm not necessarily saying it's going to happen, but I think that there's a lot more for Northwestern and Aiden Childs to play for in this spot. And so I actually have Sparty going 3-4 here. I have this being the Aiden Childs revenge game.
Hey, and speaking of Nico, we got UCLA next game. It seems like you planned that out, right? It seems
Yeah,
like
you know.
that was meant to be. No Big Ten team goes out west and does well. MSU
But the
historically
out west
hasn't.
Big Ten teams come back east and do well. So
Yeah, yeah. So I think this is a loss to UCLA. I think it's more competitive than it was last year at home, but I
yeah.
think it's a loss to UCLA. And this is when things get real difficult.
Yes, it is. It's a tough stretch. I would second. I think obviously UCLA is bringing in a new coach. I think actually a lot of people are pretty high on UCLA coming into this year. I think that they might, as you can expect with a lot of new regimes, have a bit of a slower start. This is obviously getting deeper into the year. I kind of expect UCLA to be pretty decent. And like you said, traveling to the West Coast, the old school Big Ten teams historically did not do very well. So I'm going to take that as a loss as well. So I got them at 3-5.
Yeah, and I only need one more win. You need two more wins. Are we going to get to an over for you? Probably not, but maybe after this next one. We got the rivalry game at Michigan. Historically, it seems like recently MSU has performed better at Michigan. Obviously, Pat Fitzgerald versus Kyle Whittingham. That matchup, we all know what both of these teams think of each other. We all know what Pat Fitzgerald thinks of Michigan. This is the game. Is there any upset here? Is there any possibility, or does Michigan once again knock off the Spartans?
We'll get into it obviously next when we talk about Michigan. I think that Michigan is going to be very good when it comes to playing defense and running the ball. I think a lot of the question mark that you're going to see with Michigan is the whether or not Bryce Underwood's going to make that step forward. I don't think that it really matters as much. I think that even if he isn't playing up to where most people would want them to be, I think that they are, they're returning 80% of their offensive line. They got two really nice running backs. They have, I think 9 of their 11 starters on defense are seniors. I mean, I think this is going to be even if they don't have the highest ceiling, meaning even if they're not going to be real deal contenders for the whole thing, I think they're going to be a very solid team. Cold weather late in the year. I think that this would be a pretty tough team to pull it out against for MSU. So I got them at 3-6.
Yeah. This is going to be a very, very difficult game to go into. Obviously, Michigan Stadium. I think this is something that MSU has to perform very, very well to win this game. With that being said, I do think this is going to be a close game. I think it might be a little bit more of an uncomfortable game than people think it will be, because I think MSU will obviously, like you said, come prepared, come ready to play that physical style. I think it's obviously going to be up to that quarterback position for both
Yeah.
teams. And I think while Michigan defensively will be better, it's going to still rely on Bryce Underwood to make some throws. And last year, he didn't really have to, and we'll see if that's the case this year. But yeah, at this point, I'm trying to decide where I want to go, because one way in my heart I want to go, and then there's the other smart way of going. Um, I already said there's a flag planting moment for Pat Fitzgerald, and I think there will be.
Uh-huh.
But I think this might be a moment that changes things for MSU. I think MSU goes into Michigan and beats the Wolverines.
Yep, he said it.
Jonathan
He
Smith
said it out loud.
almost did that once, twice. And I think Pat Fitzgerald is a much better coach and understands the rivalry a little bit more.
That's fair. I mean, listen, I don't necessarily fault you for saying it. I think that the game last year, obviously was a home game for Sparty, and it was not all that close. It wasn't a massacre, but it wasn't all that close. And then I think the year before was year one of Sharon Moore. And you know, it was not a great Michigan team by any means, but they had a nice defense and it was low scoring, whatever. I think this year's Michigan team is going to be a pretty complete team. I think Whittingham's a really good coach. So I'm not saying that we can't, but my prediction as of right now is going to be, I'm going to say 27-13 Michigan. That's what I think.
I can see that. I
Book
can
it.
see that. Book it now. Book it now.
Book it.
Absolutely. Let's go to the last three games. I think two of them we can kind of chalk for the most part. I think Washington's kind of a loss. Oregon is a loss at home. I think both of these are losses at home.
Loss. Agreed.
Let's go on to obviously Rutgers for a
Mhm.
possibility to go to a bowl game for Michigan State. And I think Michigan State gets it. I think they get 6 wins this year.
Brother, I hope so. And I like your predictions a lot more than mine. Yeah, I listen, if we can't beat Rutgers, we probably don't deserve to be a Big Ten team anymore, just like Rutgers doesn't. But I see us hopefully getting that win. That would be 4 wins in my prediction total. I think it's very possible, obviously, somewhere on this list that you're going to find a couple surprise wins in there. I just, we're gonna have to see how it goes. But yeah, if we can't go to Piscataway, New Jersey, and get a dub in the last game of the year, I think that's it's saying something. So fingers crossed, baby. Let's hope.
Yeah, I got 6 wins. You got 4 wins. One goes over, one goes the under. But that's why hopefully you win the 50-50 games or maybe 35-65. Like, if you win some of these
Yeah.
flip games, you can possibly get the over for MSU. But let's go on the other side. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Michigan State. Let's obviously get into Michigan a little bit more. New head coach in Kyle Whittingham brought a lot of his staff over from Utah. A lot of excitement about that. Obviously, Big Ten Media Day talked a little bit about the rivalry with Ohio State, talked a little bit the rivalry with Michigan State, obviously, as well. Bryce Underwood is back and is the captain as a sophomore, which typically doesn't happen too often. What are your thoughts on the Wolverines?
Obviously, I talked about it a little bit a second ago, but I think that Michigan is a little bit outside of. Well, I shouldn't say this. Let me caveat this. The question of the year is Bryce Underwood. And so if Bryce Underwood makes the step that I think a lot of people expect him to, or definitely at least would have expected him to 18 months ago, if he can become the quarterback that people hoped he would be, I think that Michigan can win the whole thing. I think that if he continues to struggle to push the ball down the field and to make snap accurate decisions, I think that Michigan is pretty hard capped on what they can be. Now that hard cap, I do think is I think even if Bryce Underwood doesn't play great, I think they can still win like 8 or 9 games. I do. So I don't know exactly where I'm at. Obviously, there was a lot of drama in the spring when you had Eric Waddle talking about not being overly impressed with what he saw from Bryce Underwood, in it's spring ball and it's one person's opinion, so who knows? But I think that you're going to find out obviously week 2, which we will get into. We know when Oklahoma comes to the big house, and you're going to see how for real Bryce Underwood actually is in year 2. But I think that, kind of like I said earlier, they got 4 out of 5 of their offensive linemen coming back from last year. You got Jordan Marshall at running back. You got Savion, gosh, is it Hyder? Is that his last name?
Yeah,
Who's the other running back who had everybody was raving about him from the spring. You got Jay Hill, who's the new DC that's coming up from BYU. Going to be running, they're obviously 4-2-5. His whole specialty is trying to make sure that you're giving a whole bunch of different looks, confusing the heck out of the offense, which really we saw particularly Mr. Pencil in the ear at Ohio State have a lot of success with last year as well. They do have a whole bunch of experience on defense too. They got 9 seniors projected to start for him as well. I think the real question is going to come down to whether or not you're going to be able to be effective in the passing game. You do have a guy like Andrew Marsh, who's coming back from last year, averaging 14 yards a catch. And also Kyle Whittingham brought over J.J. Buchanan, who was a kind of hybrid tight end at Utah, now is officially on the roster as a wide receiver. But a good big body jump ball athletic guy. So I do think he's going to have some pieces. I think he's going to have some opportunities to make some throws. And nothing is better for a quarterback than a dominant run game, which I do think the Michigan has the potential to have. Makes everything
Yeah,
easier. Just ask Jared Goff. When you're 5 yards of carry every play, it's makes the play action game real nice. So yeah,
exactly.
I really liked the Kyle Whittingham hire in general. I think that even though he's kind of a West Coast guy, Utah, the program that he built felt in a weird way kind of like a Big Ten school a lot of the time. They
Yeah,
just the
physicality
way
a
that they
little bit
wanted
more.
to do things, even though they were running more of a West Coast offense, they just kind of felt like kind of a gritty, tough, mean Midwestern school out there in the mountains. So I think that he makes a lot of sense, and I think that he's an instant hit for Michigan. And I think ultimately, like I said, they're going to go as far as Bryce Underwood's going to be able to take them.
Yeah, and the one thing about Utah, especially under Kyle Whittingham, is that like if you went in there, especially at a night game, it was absolutely like over. Like it was a nightmare situation to go into Utah
Yeah,
and face them. And sometimes like offensively they didn't perform the best, but you knew defensively that they were going to show up and show out. Like that's just what Utah was. It was a very physical team. Kind of ironically, that you bring your DC over from BYU, which is your
yeah,
rival a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Ironically enough, but no, I think a lot of what you said is pretty accurate. They obviously did get Jamie French, from Texas, the Texas wide receiver transfer. I think he's a guy that could be a little bit interesting. I obviously said this kind of in the intro a little bit about Michigan already. I think this is one of the better wide receiver rooms that Michigan has had recently. I think there is some really good talent here. There's some young talent as well. Andrew Marsh obviously had a great season last year. Tight end, which has historically been one of the strong points for Michigan, I think is one of the bigger question marks. Obviously, Zach Marsh does have experience at the tight end position, but he hasn't been as elite as the kind of the guys Michigan has had in the past. So that's kind of different. I think offensive line wise, they'll be good. Michigan's always good offensive line wise. Jordan Marshall is very, very good. Savion Hider, I do not want to tackle that guy. That guy is
The grown
absolutely
man.
massive.
Yeah.
Just walking around, I can't believe he's a freshman. He's going to be an issue to deal with, and then defensively as well, you have Rod Moore. Is a projected star. Ida, someone that MSU actually recruited a little bit, might be a defensive tackle. I think defensively, Michigan's going to be good. Michigan's always good defensively. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting season. Obviously, a little bit of a different kind of coaching staff, but it's also, in my opinion, a coaching staff that's a lot more competent. And having a coaching staff that is a lot more competent is a scary situation because Michigan did not have, in my opinion, a very competent head coach last year in Sharon Moore. And
Sure.
you have a guy
He had
in
his mind on
Kyle
other things.
Whittingham that is yeah, yeah, it is mine and other things. But you have a guy in Kyle Whittingham that absolutely is motivated because I think if
Mhm.
Utah would have let him come back, he would have. And now he's
Yeah.
at Michigan, and he obviously is friends with Urban Meyer. We'll talk about Ohio State here shortly. This is a guy that has won every place he has been to. And I think this Michigan team, while they might not feel like they did under the Jim Harbaugh tenure, I think you're going to see a little bit more back to the Michigan of old that people saw outside of their Sharon Moore years.
Yeah, well, and ironically enough, the first game of the Jim Harbaugh era was at Utah against Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, let's hop into it. Let's get right into the schedule here. How do you have them faring against RTB in week one?
So 8.5 wins over under for Michigan. In my opinion, I think Michigan hits it.
Mm.
Western Michigan Love the Broncos. Love Lance Taylor. This was supposed to be, I believe, a game in Germany, if I remember correctly. That's not happening anymore. Obviously, it's a home game for Michigan. Michigan rolls. I think Western is probably the best MAC team or a top two. MAC team might be one of the better like Power Five schools, in my opinion, just because of the talent they have coming back. I think Lance Taylor has a really good roster. But good luck to any Power Five school that goes into a Big Ten school.
Yeah.
Michigan rolls.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that despite the talent that Western has, I think that the size and the physicality that Michigan's going to be able to present on both sides of the ball, you know, historically that's obviously what happens in the Big Ten and the MAC matchups there. I think Michigan will be able to run the ball and be able to do more or less what they want, control the clock, and hammer them down.
Yep.
So big win for Big Blue.
This is a next matchup that I'm super excited about, especially the quarterback matchup. We saw John Mateer versus Bryce Underwood last year. Was a pretty fun matchup overall. Michigan obviously offensively didn't perform well. John Mateer threw a couple interceptions, which is something that he's kind of known for. He's not great at taking care of the ball when it comes to the quarterback position, but he sure can run. He's sure very athletic. This is going to be a real test early on for Michigan. I think Oklahoma is going to be really good. I think Oklahoma goes into the big house, and I think Oklahoma gets the win, though.
Yeah, it's interesting because these teams feel incredibly similar. I think that Brent Venables, Kyle Whittingham is a very fun coaching matchup. I think that Mateer and Bryce Underwood, obviously being pretty athletic, I shouldn't even say pretty athletic, very athletic, and really the strong suit of their game thus far being their ability to run the ball. Um, I do think it's a very tight game, and I think that evenly matched teams, tight game, I tend to lean with the home team. So I do have Michigan winning this and moving on to 2-0. I think that it's going to more or less come down to who can control the ball, who can control the clock. It's going to feel like a kind of heavyweight Big Ten matchup, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think it's going to be relatively low scoring, kind of a slugfest, like a 2017 sort of game. But yeah, I have Michigan winning this one.
You know what? I'll change my opinion. You convinced me. I'll go 2-0 for Michigan because things get a little bit more interesting as the way it goes. I think Michigan runs the table, in my opinion, until that Indiana game. I think that Indiana
Yeah.
game will be the next kind of test for them because UTEP, Michigan runs over UTEP at home. I
Yeah.
don't think there's very much of a conversation to be had against UTEP.
Yeah. I think if Iowa was at Kinnick Stadium, I think that could be a tough one. But I think that being at the big house, I think that's gonna be. I'd be very surprised if Michigan dropped that one. I do think at Minnesota is a little bit of a tricky game.
The Fighting PJ
Obviously, that's
Flecks.
well, it's kind of an overlooked rivalry in a lot of ways. But you know, you got your little brown jug game there. Yeah, rowing the boat, PJ Fleck. I do think that Michigan wins that game, but I do think there's some opportunity for some Golden Gopher trickery there. Who knows what Matt Campbell's going to be like and what he's going to be able to do with Penn State? I don't think that they're going to be able to go into the big house in year one and get that done. So yeah, I think it more or less, unless you have other feelings, comes down to what's going to happen when Indiana comes to the big house.
Kirk Cincinnati comes into the big house and wins.
Yeah.
Indiana is, and it's weird to say, but I think Indiana is just a power in football. At this point, I don't think there's any coach in the country that's crazier than Kirk Cincinnati. And this is a guy that did what he did last year without quote unquote like the huge transfers, right?
Yeah.
And now he's gotten them. Like Nick Marsh is in. You got Josh Hoover from TCU in. You got these big time transfers. You got these recruits in.
Yep.
Maybe you kind of need that type of mentality you had last year, but like if you get more talent on this roster, I don't see how you're worse than last year. Maybe you
Yeah.
are. Obviously you're losing Mendoza, you're losing some key pieces, but Indiana is not going to be a team that's going to be easy to be beat. And I think Indiana goes into the big house and wins. So I think this is Michigan's first loss.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With the caveat being that if Michigan does win this game, I think that is saying that Michigan's for real and Michigan can win the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think that if Michigan winds up 7-0 after beating Indiana here, that's putting the whole country on notice. But yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that Signetti's kind of a force of nature. They obviously, if portal rankings and things like that are any indication, they went out and they really got a massive haul, brought in a ton of talent, and I would assume that Indiana is going to be fantastic again. So yeah, give me the Hoosiers.
So we are same record going into Rutgers. They go and
Win.
put squad away and win. We already know what MSU, Michigan is. I'm going
Win.
with a loss. You're going with a win on there. At Oregon, I made the statement that no one goes out west and win. But if there's any team that can do it, it's a team led by a West Coast coach.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I think while the win against Oklahoma is a good win, I think this is going to be the moment where Kyle Whittingham's like, yeah, we're going to be competing in the Big Ten. I think they go at Oregon and get a win. And I think this secures the fact that Michigan's going to go at least 9-3 this year.
Okay. Um,
Which is weird
I,
because I had MSU beating them at home.
yeah. Yeah, I go back and forth. I think that it's historically, the Midwestern Big Ten teams that go west tend to not play very well. I could definitely see that being the case here. The counter is that historically, the more talented and fast an Oregon team is, the kryptonite to that is uber duper smash mouth football, grind out the clock, play really good defense. And I think that Michigan's going to be pretty damn good at that.
Yeah,
I think particularly back to kind of like the prime Chip Kelly, Marcus Mariota kind of days where, Oregon was really the first, Oregon really busting onto the scene. And really the teams that would give them the most trouble were usually Stanford. And Stanford was 15 play drive, 8 minutes off the clock, 3 yards a carry sort of thing. And I think that Michigan has the potential to do a similar thing here. I think that's the way that they're going to have to win that game if they go to Eugene.
agreed.
So I don't hate it. I do just think that the odds are really stacked against them. And if you talk to just about anybody in the college football expert world, everybody's incredibly high on Oregon.
Yeah,
I think the main thing that you're going to have to see this year is the mental state of Dante Moore. I think if Dante
agreed.
Moore comes out and he's feeling good and he's confident, he's ready to go, I think that he can be the number one quarterback off the board and probably the number one pick in the draft. But if there's some cracks in that mental armor, I think that there's potential for some big game implosion. And so I'm going to err on the side of I think that Dante Moore is incredibly talented and made a couple of the most impressive throws I've ever seen a college quarterback make last year.
Yeah,
So I'm rooting for him, and
absolutely.
I hope that he and Oregon are going to be really good. So give me the Ducks in this one, but I could definitely see Michigan finding a way to win this game.
Yeah, if you want to talk about one of the most impressive throws, just look at the Penn State game.
Yeah, yeah, in a
Insanely
barrel.
talented. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. UCLA, I think this is a win at home, and I don't think Michigan is looking ahead at all. Even though they
Mm.
understand that next game.
Yep. Yep. I agree. And I think especially in my scenario where they lose to Oregon, I think that you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're ready to roll. Yeah. So give me Michigan on that one, and then let's get to the game. Let's get to
The
the game,
game.
Mister Types. What do you got for me?
So we got the same record as of right now, just different losses
Mhm.
where they came. Uh, Obviously Michigan lost last year
Mhm.
under Sharon Moore. Obviously, we get a little bit of a familiarity with Kyle Whittingham, with Urban Meyer. This is an Ohio State team that is really good. This is an Ohio State team that finally overcame losing to Michigan, if you're Ryan Day.
Mhm.
I think that continues, though. I think Ohio State wins a close game at home.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that Ohio State is at least theoretically going to have a little more firepower than Michigan's going to have. I think that you expect their defense to be probably not quite on the same level as last year, but I think that they're going to have a really nice defense as well. It's going to be at the shoe. Julian Sayan's going to be back. Had a phenomenal year last year. You kind of expect him to make some further steps forward this year as well. You're going to have Jeremiah Smith, who's probably going to be the first receiver off the board as well. And I do think that there's something really kind of cathartic about Ryan Day getting that off his chest last year and, getting the win, breaking the seal. So I do expect it to be a tight game. But again, historically, whenever this game is tight, I tend to go with the home team anyway. So give me the Bucks.
So both of us hit the over for Michigan at 9-3.
Yep. Yep.
You have one game that makes a lot more sense that they lose, and I have one game that goes on heart.
Yeah. Well, I think in my scenario, I think if you, especially if, so I had them losing to Indiana, losing to Oregon, losing to Ohio State. I think if those are close games, I think if those are
College
competitive,
football playoff.
especially given that you're losing at Oregon and at Ohio State in that scenario, if it's tight, I think that they actually could get in at 9-3.
Yeah.
And listen, if you get in, anything can happen. You can make a run. But yeah, I think that they're a mean 9-3.
Yeah. Like how Whittingham said at Big Ten Media Days, to be a successful season, you need to play meaningful games in November, and I think Michigan gets that this
Yeah.
year.
Yep. Agreed.
So
Agreed.
we've talked a lot about college. We've
Yes,
almost
we did.
done an hour of college football. Let's quickly go over to Lions. Let's get a little bit thoughts on them. Obviously, finishing last in the NFC North last year, which is insane to say, especially after the first couple of years of the Lions winning the NFC North. What are your thoughts on this Lions team, real quick? Over under is 10.5 for this team. Is this team going to be back in conversations to win the NFC North? Or is it going to be a little bit of a struggle because you have a new offense coordinator, Drew Petzing? Obviously, Kelvin Shepard is back. Jared Goff is still there. Offensive line has been rebuilt. Defense, secondary without Terrion Arnold. What's the secondary going to look like? What's this team going to look like in general, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the over under, honestly, I'm gonna need to hold my answer until we kind of go through the schedule. But I think that the Lions are in a very unique position where you have so much firepower on offense that I think that you can compete with anybody on any given Sunday. And when that's the case, if you can get into the playoffs, anything can happen. So I do think that that definitionally means that you're a Super Bowl contender. The real question is going to come down to, the three things that really loomed over last year and what it's going to do for this year. So number one, the last couple of years have been just riddled with injuries and really important injuries in really big spots for the Lions.
Yeah,
So it's going to be kind of a matter of, obviously injuries are going to happen. It's an NFL season. It's a long season. But how can your important players hold up? How can your depth hold up as well? Option number two, or part number two that we're bringing up here is they've put in a lot of efforts and a lot of capital to kind of rebuild the offensive line. What is that going to be for them? Obviously, they went in the first round and they got Blake. Is it Blake Miller, the kid from
yeah,
Clemson?
Blake Miller out of Clemson. Yeah,
Yeah, and so really moving a lot of pieces around there, because despite the fact that we were, I think, the fifth highest scoring offense in the league last year, the running game was not what it has been over the last couple of years,
no,
specifically between the tackles. So I think that if you can, get back to a similar place that you were in like 2024, which was a pretty elite offensive line, but if you can get back to something approaching that, I think it's going to make life a lot easier for Jahmyr Gibbs and for Isaiah Pacheco, which then in turn makes life much easier for Jared Goff. And then the third and the biggest question mark of all is just kind of the defense, more generally speaking, right? I like Kelvin Shepard. Yeah, he seems like a good guy. I like the kind of the emotion, and it seems like the cultural fit of Kelvin Shepard. I don't know though when it comes to the schematic skill of Kelvin Shepard if it's there. And I can't necessarily fault him because I think there were a lot of injuries last year, and I think there's some talent deficiencies in a number of spots on that defense as well. But I think that
Agreed.
you have a couple of really great pieces. Obviously, you have Hutch and you have Jack Campbell. And hypothetically, in the near future, you're going to be getting back Brian Branch and maybe
Kirby
eventually
Joseph.
Kirby Joseph. So there are some pieces there, but I think that you don't need to be an elite defense. You just need to be a middle of the road to slightly above average defense to give this team a chance to win. So all of
Exactly.
that is to be said. I have high expectations. We wake up in a world where the NFC North is still very tough, and I think is going to be continue to be very tough for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's kill or be killed.
Yeah. It might be one of the toughest divisions in all of the NFL, honestly. Like, if you talk about like the top three teams, you got the Packers, the Bears, the Lions, Vikings. We'll see with the Vikings, especially with that quarterback
Honestly,
position.
I think the Vikings are going to be pretty good.
You think so?
I think the Vikings are going to be sneaky good. I think that, yeah, which we're not talking about the Vikings, but anyway, sorry. I needed to throw that in there.
Okay,
Vikings are my
no.
dark horse team.
Vikings are your dark horse team. Maybe we'll get four teams in the playoffs from the NFC
Yeah,
North. Well, you never know. It might
yeah,
be the first time that ever happens. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I really like the investment they had in the offensive line. Caden Mays, I think going out and get in him for investing in him in that contract is going to be really good. Blake Miller, obviously being a rookie, he'll go through ups, downs, stuff like that. I think Isaac Tesla needs to step up a little bit. JMO, according to people at training camp, has looked incredible. Love seeing that, obviously. Jameer Gibbs, would love to see him back a little bit. Hopefully, that contract extension comes into play. Isaiah Pacheco, obviously, is the signing the 1 year deal. I like him. Maybe a little bit of a different player, a little bit of a more downgrade from David Montgomery, in my opinion, because Isaiah Pacheco isn't who he used to be. But I still think he'll be a good RB2. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, baller. Tyleik Williams, from everything that has been coming out of training camp, is that he's been looking stronger. That he's been better against the run, which is obviously a great sign. Ellie McNeil seems like he's 100% healthy. We all know what he can do when he's healthy. I'm interested to see, obviously, the other defensive end position. Is it going to be Derek Moore, who's going to be out for about 7 to 10 days, or is it going to be DJ Wanham, someone that hasn't stayed healthy? Turns out it seems like Brad Holmes likes those kind of defensive ends,
Mhm.
unfortunately. I like Malcolm Rodriguez. Might be out for a little bit. He got injured today in his ankle. Jack Campbell, love Jack Campbell. We'll see what Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph are once they return. Brian Branch, I'm not super concerned about once he returns. Kirby Joseph, a little bit more concerning with obviously his injury. DJ Reed, I would expect him to be better this year. He needs to be better this year. Just overall, when it comes to starters, I really do like this Lions team. Obviously, backup can be a little bit of question here and there, but I think it's going to be one of the better, more talented rosters when it comes to the NFL. And that's a big reason why they have 10.5 over under right now, and will probably be considered
Yeah.
for the top of the NFC North,
Well,
especially due to the schedule.
well, and I think, and we can get into it too. We can get into the schedule, but I think what I want to see personally as a fan is if we're rolling around the trade deadline, is Brad Holmes willing to move some pieces to fill a hole or two to actually really compete for the whole thing?
Agreed.
Particularly, as much as it's a broken record, is Brad Holmes going to trade for an edge rusher? But even if not that, is he willing to make a move to go get like a premier corner?
Yeah.
Obviously, like the Colts made a big move at the deadline last year to go get a guy like Sauce Gardner. The Rams made a bunch of moves in the offseason to go shore up their secondary as well. I think that I just, if it makes sense and it's there and they really are in contention and they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFC, are they willing to be the first Detroit team in forever that actually really pulls the trigger and does the thing? So that's
Yeah.
me. That's what I want to see, Zach.
Yeah, I would love to see him do it. We'll obviously see if they do at that time. They have in the past, and they always talk about they have to be like a culture fit, stuff like that. So it might have to be the right player. It might not necessarily be the top guy. But
Mhm.
at this point, like you need to go for it at some point. The NFC North is not going to get any easier, and this might be the best opportunity to do so because when you look at record wise, when you look at schedule, this is going to be the most friendly quote unquote schedule you're going to have, especially for finishing last year. You're going to be facing a schedule that should be pretty favorable for you. And let's get into the schedule a little bit. Let's talk about this schedule. It should be a fun schedule. Really important to get off to a good start, though, in my opinion, where you
Yes.
have the Saints week 1 at home. This is a Saints team that I think will be better. But I still think this is a win for the Lions and almost kind of a little bit of a must win for the Lions as well, especially because of who you have week 2.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks around the Saints. You have the oldest second-year quarterback ever in Tyler Shuck, who obviously, really did have moments last year. Really looks pretty good. They are bringing back Alvin Kamara. They just signed Chris Olave to an extension, so I think that the Saints are not going to be pushovers by any means.
I agree.
But I think that if you are for real, I think that this is an important game in week 1 to really come out and set the tone.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Lions could hang a whole bunch of points and blow the Saints out in this game, which I think would be obviously a great way to get things going.
Yeah, and exactly what you need to do because I think at least going 3-2 in these first 5 games before the bye is almost necessary because things start to get a little bit more difficult going forward. And I think you get your first loss in week 2. I think going to Buffalo, new stadium against Josh Allen, against a team that traded for an actual true wide receiver one.
Mm,
Um, this is a nightmare situation. And if you go in there and you win, that's almost like, hey, we're back moment. Like we're a favorite for a reason. But if you lose this game, I don't think it's going to make anyone nervous at all. But if you do fall to 0-2,
mm.
that's when things kind of like, hey, like you need to win at least these next 3 games, or maybe this might not go super well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And for the record, this is actually going to be the Bills' opening night at their new stadium,
Yeah,
Thursday Night Football. Um, I think that, and the Bills will be favorites in this game, understandably. And I think that Josh Allen will probably have a great game and tear it up and all of that. But this also is a get back game for the Lions. Last time they played, Bills came into Ford Field and won a crazy shootout. Really torched the defense quite a bit. Um, I think I think this is a game where the Lions want this one real bad. I really do. And I think that this is something where the high-powered offenses are going to be out there. And I think that if you're the Lions, I think that you probably need just a couple turnovers, a couple plays, and a couple big spots is really all you need. You don't
I
need
love it.
to shut Josh Allen down. You don't need to completely turn his lights out. I think you just need small, brief moments of containment and/or small, brief moments where Josh Allen tries to do a little bit too much, and you take
Yeah.
advantage of it. So I think it's a very winnable game. It's a tough game, but it's a very winnable game. And give me the Lions at 2-0.
Kind of just like the Chiefs versus Rams when Jared Goff was with the Rams, just outscore Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Yep.
Love it. Week 3, we get a little bit of a return for Aaron Glenn to Detroit. You're winning this game. Like it's a Jets. Jets aren't going to be good.
This might be the Aaron Glenn gets fired game.
Yeah, this might be. I'm surprised he even made it to year 2. But yeah, you win
Yeah.
this game.
Yeah, this should be one of those which I'm very happy that the Dan Campbell era has been this way, but the Lions last couple of years when they get a bad team, especially get a bad team at home, this is like a 50-point blowout. So that's what I expect in this spot.
Yeah. So you have the Lions at 3-0. I have the Lions at 2-1. They go to Carolina. This is a
Mhm.
team with Bryce Young last year that surprised some people a little bit. Obviously, a young team. What are your thoughts on this matchup? I think this is going to be one of the more kind of tricky games
Mhm.
early on, especially on the road. But I do think the Lions get a win here.
Um, yeah, I think it's tough. I actually think the Panthers might win the NFC South this year. They really, especially though they finished the year last year, they had the Rams on the ropes late in the season. I think Bryce Young really took some significant steps forward last year. I think they put a lot of great pieces around Bryce Young. I think that they've just done a fantastic job from the front office standpoint. The coaching has been a lot better the last few years. There was a brief moment in time there where the Panthers were kind of the laughing stock of the league. They're definitely not that anymore. I
Agreed.
think this is a really difficult one. So I'm actually going to put loss number one of the year up there for the Lions going to Carolina.
Hey, we're both 3-1 and going into week 5, which is their last game. Drew Petzing's homecoming against the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. I don't think it's going to be relatively close. I think Detroit goes in there and beats them pretty handily.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's the classic Jacoby Brissett's one of the best backups in the league, but he's a terrible starter.
Yeah,
For whatever reason, it's like if somebody goes down in the second quarter and you put in Jacoby Brissett, he's going to be real nice. But if it's his show, it's not going to be happening. Also, a chance that if the Cardinals get off to a real bad first month, you actually might be seeing Carson Beck here as well. So yeah,
probably.
this should be a game where the Lions light them up. So give me 4-1.
4-1, feeling pretty good into week 6, which is a bye week. Week
Mm-hmm.
7, we got the first North matchup. We got the Lions versus the Packers.
Yep. Yep. Coming off the bye, at least hypothetically, you're rested and relatively healthy. You're gonna get the full 2-week cycle there to prep for the Packers. Not that you should probably need a ton of time to prep. I mean, more or less, you're gonna know what the Packers are all about. You know their personnel. You know their coaching staff. You know what they like to do. They know what you like to do. But you should be rested, and it's a tough game, but it's a game that you need to win, and it's a game that you should win. So give me the Lions winning this one as well.
Agreed. I think the Lions win this game. I think it's just 5-1 at this point. I feel like you're feeling pretty good. And then the Minnesota Vikings, the dark horse team for you, come
Yeah.
into Ford Field. Do they
Yep.
win? Do the Vikings once again beat the Lions in Detroit?
They really have been on a bit of a run. They obviously beat us last year in a game that felt crazy and silly because it was JJ McCarthy, and I still can't believe we lost that one, but we did. Um, there definitely is some get back mentality here, obviously, but I really think that Minnesota, under KOC with Kyler Murray, I think it's kind of real scary. And I think that especially the mobility and the dynamic playmaking that he's going to bring is not a great combination for our offense. And I don't know, Minnesota's just even when Minnesota doesn't have a great quarterback, they just find ways to be good in other spots. And I think that this is going to be the most talented quarterback they've had. I don't know, Dante Culpepper maybe. Like when it just comes to raw
A
talent,
while, yeah.
yeah, a long time, right?
What about
And
Brett
so I
Favre?
think that yeah, yeah. I mean, well, it's Kirk Cousins too, but yeah, I think that this is a kind of sneaky one. Obviously, it's a divisional game. Give me the Vikings here. I don't like it, but give me the Vikings.
I think the Lions go 1-1 against the Vikings. I will say this is a win. I think they probably lose at the Vikings. I think this is
Mm.
a win, though. We got the Dolphins.
I think Dolphins are in a rebuild, baby. If you don't
Yeah,
smoke the Dolphins, it's big trouble, big trouble. But
yeah, big trouble.
who's the? Oh, Malik Willis is the quarterback now for the Dolphins. Yep. So,
Yeah, I think this is a win.
yep. If it's not a win, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But
We
yeah, we'll
got
take a
the
win. So what's
Germany
that?
game now. We got the
Yep,
New
Germany.
England Patriots. I think this is where the second loss of the season comes in for the Lions. I
Okay.
think they lose to the Pats in Germany.
Um, give me the dub. I think that mainly because of this, I think that the Patriots are going to take a step back this year. I think that Drake May is a good quarterback. I don't think that Drake May is unbelievable. I also think the Patriots benefited last year from playing an abysmally, hilariously bad schedule in a lot of ways. They did have some big wins. They obviously made it to the Super Bowl, which you can't discount that. But I think that I don't know. I'm not real high on the Patriots this year. I think last year might be a little bit of an aberration, which isn't to say that they aren't going to continue to be a good team. I just don't think that the Patriots, as of this moment, are a great team, even with the addition of like AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And I think that it's one of those things where you're traveling internationally and it's difficult and it's not the usual, routine and schedule and you're a little bit off your game and whatever. And I think that the teams with better cultures tend to do good in those spots. And
Agree.
as much as I do like Vrabel, and I think that he's a good coach and is exactly what the Patriots were looking for, I think that MCDC is better. So give me the Lions.
Both of us has two losses going into the Tampa Bay game. Is Baker Mayfield going to get revenge from the playoffs, or is the Lions going to defend the den?
It's tricky. It's tricky. I mean, we've had some knife fights with Tampa over the last couple of years. And I do like that we obviously get them at home. Um, I think that I think that Baker's obviously in a huge prove it year, a huge bet on himself kind of year. But I also think that Tampa is lacking in a lot of spots. I think obviously they lost Mike Evans. You do expect a guy like Emeka Mbuka to be, better this year. Did have a great rookie season. But he also, he did get banged up a little bit, but the second half of his season was significantly worse than the first half of his season as well.
Agreed.
So it'll be something to keep your eye on. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's, regressing to the mean. It also doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be an all pro. Obviously Bucky Irving's still there. But there's the Vita Vea drama. And frankly, I think that Vita Vea is one of the main reasons why we have as much issues with the Bucks as we do. And if I were
Absolutely.
Brad Holmes, I'd be on the phone every single day with Tampa's front office trying to figure out how I can get him in Detroit. So I do think that this is a winnable game and a game that we should win. It wouldn't surprise me if the Bucks clipped us here, but give me the Lions again.
Yeah, I will go with the Lions. I agree. I would love Vita Vea in Detroit. Imagine Vita Vea, Ali
And
McNeil,
Lee
and
McNeil.
Tyreek Williams. I don't think anyone's running on that defense. Good luck trying to stop those guys. I go with a win here, and I think the winning continues. I think after the game against Chicago, I think Ben Johnson is still looking for his first win against the Lions. I think Lions defend home field against the Bears in this next upcoming game.
Yeah. It's tricky. It's tricky. Um, I think that the Lions are going to split with Chicago. I don't have a great preference one way or the other. For whatever reason, it seems like we've been playing better at Soldier Field than in Ford Field.
Yeah.
So who knows if that's going to necessarily continue. Just because there's been, I think, several weeks in a row of me putting up Lions wins here. Give me the Lions losing this one at home, but winning at Soldier Field at the end of the year.
So you have 3 losses, I have 2 losses. We're going to see if the Lions for you bounce back against the Atlanta Falcons. I think they win at the Falcons. I think the Falcons are kind of a little bit of a mess.
I think that there's a lot of potential with the Falcons. I think the problem is that you have two quarterbacks that are the same guy, and that includes the fact that they're hurt all the time. Like
Yeah.
they're, obviously Tua and Michael Penix are like they have like similar builds. They're both lefties. I don't know. They both have bad knees. Like I don't.
They
I
both
just
don't play ever.
yeah. And so I think in a funny way, um, I almost feel like the Falcons really are kind of a quarterback away from being pretty darn good. Which I think that if Tampa doesn't actually re-sign Baker at the end of the year, and if they don't franchise tag him, I think that him going to Atlanta is kind of a fun spot. But anyway, without that becoming too much of a Falcons discussion, yeah, the Lions should win this and get them back in the win column.
Agree. And I think this next game with the Titans is a
Yeah,
win.
same thing. I
Same
think the
one.
Titans will be better. I do think that they'll be better, but especially with this being, again, one of those theoretically bottom third NFL teams going to Ford Field. The last couple of years have said that those teams get smoked. So yeah, give me a big Lions win there.
And this is where the winning stops for me. I have the Lions losing at the Vikings. Like I said, I have the Lions and the Vikings going 1-1 against each other. And this is the Lions' third loss on the season.
Yeah. Well, I said, I said the split was coming here. So yeah, give me the Lions actually winning on the road against the Vikings. I think,
We like it.
in my scenario, this is a get back game, payback game, revenge game for the Lions. I think it's going to be close. I think that all of the divisional games this year will be very close.
Agreed.
I think it probably comes down to like a Jake Bates sort of field goal situation late. Probably going to come down to can the Lions convert a fourth down or stop them on fourth down sort of situation. But yeah, give me the Lions here in this one.
Yeah, can the offensive line protect against a blitz, which the Vikings really like to run
Yes, they
under
will.
Flores?
Yep, yep, yep. This is I'm looking forward to this matchup. This is gonna be a fun game.
The Giants, the mighty Giants, Cam
Yeah.
Scaboo coming to Detroit,
Hmm.
Jackson Dart coming to Detroit. I am actually really high on the Giants. I think the Giants are going to actually be pretty fun this year. With that being said, I think the Lions continue to defend home field, and I think they get a close win against the Giants.
Gosh, I want it. I really do. Um, I think that if the offensive line is playing well, I think that we can win this game. I think that if we have mediocre to not great offensive line play, I think this is a nightmare. I think that the Giants pass rush and the Giants front seven is just I mean, it might rival like the Texans or like the Rams. Like I think it's that good. And I think that obviously the Lions' kryptonite is if you can't protect Jared Goff and he doesn't have a lot of time, that offense can stall really quickly. So as much as I don't want this to be the case, I actually think that this is kind of a sneaky Lions get punched in the mouth game. So give me the Giants in this one.
Little bit of a revenge game from DJ Reader, which is now at
Mhm.
the Giants. Even though I think he really enjoyed his time in Detroit, that would be a little bit of a um, nice win for him, obviously, as well. Chicago
Yeah.
at Chicago.
Yeah, I said, I said there's gonna be the split. So yeah, give me the Lions in this one. And what might end up being one of the last Lions and Bears games at Soldier Field. But yeah,
Sadly,
I think it's gonna be a split. Like I said, it wouldn't shock me if the Lions won at home and lost on the road or whatever. I guess it gets us at the same place, but give me the Lions beating the Bears at Soldier Field.
give me Dan Campbell, MCDC going 4-0 against Ben Johnson. Let's go to last week for the Green Bay Packers on the road. This could be a game for the division. Thoughts on this last matchup?
Yeah, I think that, well, in my scenario I've laid out here, I think this is one of those for the division and probably for the one seed games, frankly. I think that Green Bay is good. Don't get me wrong. I think that Green Bay in some big spots can be soft. I don't know how else to say it other than that. I think Matt LaFleur, I think, is a great coach, very smart guy. And if MCDC got hit by a bus tomorrow and you told me that Matt LaFleur was coming in to be our head coach, I'd be very happy about it. I think that Jordan Love is a good, not great quarterback. I think that particularly in some big spots, I've been not all that impressed with how Jordan Love has played. I think that obviously Micah Parsons is a bad man, a scary man. But I think that the Lions have a whole bunch to play for in this game. And F Lambo, baby. Let's go get another win.
I like it. We're going to get a takeover. We're going to get a blue takeover in
Yep.
Lambeau. That would be a great sign. That would be a great game. Um, I do think that this is a game that the Lions trap in the end, and I think this is
How
going to
dare you?
be the motivation factor. I think this is going to be the propelling the Lions into the playoffs and not settling for things. And I
Yeah.
think this is going to be what MCDC is going to use to eventually lead to hopefully an NFC championship appearance and maybe even a little bit further than that because I think this is a team that can absolutely get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so, man. I really hope so. Gosh, before I'm an old man, I need to see a Lions. I need to see a Lions Super Bowl, Zach. I really do.
I do
I
too.
need it.
I need it. I think every fan needs it. at this point. But man, that was so much fun. We got good football for MSU. We got good football for Michigan. We got great football for the Detroit Lions. So
Mhm.
nothing better, in my opinion, than talking about all those, previewing all of them. And for anyone that is still tuning in, an hour and 26 minutes into this episode, thank you so much for sticking with us. But if you're a Lions fan, if you're a Michigan fan, if you're an MSU fan, I think this is much worth the listen, and really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to join. Man, this has been a great 600th episode. I cannot believe we are here. It's unbelievable, and football is right around the corner.
It is. It is. Thank you as always for having me. I always appreciate you. Some of my favorite conversations of the year. And hopefully you'll have me back again soon.
We have to do fantasy football, so make sure you tune into that episode. That's going to be a really long one as well. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for everyone's support. 600 episodes and more coming up. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and tune into other content as well.